So I'm going to stop here, but unless you have maybe a question or two, I'll answer. But if not, I'm not sure what you have else planned for the program today.
Why is it so hard to get legislators to, even when they act on it, let's say legislatively, when it comes to the next step of actually practicing what they initiated, it's like people are hesitant or... Because
legislators are like anybody else. If I'm going to get re-elected, I don't care. If someone's going to challenge me and that person is strong enough, then I care. And I think that's what's going to be the next thing to do. See, Juneteenth came about because enough people spread the word who came out of Texas, because it was a Texas thing. Man, I heard about Juneteenth years ago, but okay, that's Texas. But then people left Texas and they started taking Juneteenth celebrations on their own, like barbecues in the backyard, in Virginia and North Carolina and elsewhere. But it took the killing of George Floyd to get the nation sympathetic. And so they get Juneteenth in Mississippi, in Alabama, elsewhere. Some of this number of states have made it a state holiday because a holiday for the federal level just means if you work for the federal government, you don't work. Doesn't mean that everybody stays home. It's a holiday. But a state holiday means all the state workers stay home too.
And the city workers.
Yeah, the city. So if you had gradually Juneteenth became safe as a holiday, that there's no controversy involved. And so the lawmakers here, it did get pushed. And see, I think the governor is getting pushed because why would she issue today a statement about Abolition Day? She didn't have to, but she did. And definitely try to get a copy of what she said, because that copy should be copied. It should be placed in libraries and other places. And as a result, see, since the governor did this, other people feel, oh, maybe it's safe for me to do something now. Other people in the state assembly. So that's how we can push it further and further to where we want. It's a holiday. Is there another question or not?
What are your recommendations to get the City University of New York, Lehman College, Edwards, all of the Africana Studies departments and Black Studies?
Yeah, I talked about that about 2 years ago, and I've been retired since 2007 from Lehman, so some people I know are gone now. But I tried that, and I didn't really get the connections I wanted to get. But I'm gonna try again because I do know the librarians is very helpful. And I'm pretty sure I can get the library at the college to put something on display. Maybe sometime like May or June instead of July. When students are still at the campus. They have a display because all you had to do is put a display and put out a number of books that deal with early part of the 20th century or 19th century, and maybe have some things like these. Signs you put up, and that way people walk by, they can see it. But I also would like the college to have maybe half a day where they can have a program of speakers and talk about the need, because the whole thing about 1827 is that time period, you can deal with slavery, but also you can deal with civil rights discrimination. The state of New York was just as racist as the state of Mississippi when it came to not having civil rights. You had people who couldn't get on the public transports. If the weather's nasty, if they got on, they couldn't be on the shelter. You couldn't get on the steamboats. You couldn't go to an inn or to a hotel. You couldn't dine in certain places. That was the law in the state of New York. See, it wasn't until around the early 1870s that New York passed civil rights law. Prior to that time, there was no civil rights law. I mean, every now and then there's someone who challenged in the courts and they would win, but only apply to an individual act. I mean, 100 years before Rosa Parks, there was a lawsuit in the state of New York. Same issue. The right to sit in a public carrier. In that case, the person won. But it's only one on that particular line. There were 4 lines for public transport. So she won on one line that affected everybody on that line, but other lines had to wait until the state of New York had civil rights law. So the thing is, you can use 1827 as the starting point. Discuss anything you want to discuss, basically. Because it has that impact. See, I wrote a book on the color orphanage that started in 1836 because that other orphanages said, "You're too dark. You don't belong here. You can't come here." So the Quakers, see, the Quakers were slave owners, as I said, until they were told, "You can't be a Quaker and be a slave owner." So a lot of Quakers got rid of their slaves, took them to North Carolina, gave them a degree of freedom there. But also they established like old folks home, and they established 1836 color orphanage asylum, which still exists today under Harlem Dowling, their successor. And so I wrote a book about that from looking at 1836 to 1946. Anyway, yeah, so the main thing is to try to publicize, and if you have the contacts, if you have those contacts, and again, it could be a job, it could be a church. See, there's no reason why pastors could, maybe 2 weeks before the second Monday in July, put in the church bulletin.
Yeah.
Put in the church bulletin on second Monday, whatever that date is the day to commemorate. Or even the pastor himself, give him a little bit of knowledge and he can put it to a sermon.
Yes, he can.
And say that, and that's going to spread throughout that particular church. And who knows what people in the church hear and how it's going to affect them, impact on them to spread it someplace else. Anything else? I'm here.
1863 in New York, there were riots.
Yes, the color orphanage got burnt down. It was July. Folks got lynched in the streets. Black folks, the population in Manhattan went down. The people fled to the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and they went to a Wigsville community in Brooklyn, and it wasn't very safe at that time. See, and that was just one. That was just one of the riots. I mean, there was one in 1834. You had riots in the 20th century. So, man, it's common. New York, has a reputation of being liberal, but you can't. There's a lot of acts of aggression, violence that occurred here. See, the governor, in 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation came out, one of the most important things about the proclamation was that the government would accept men of color to the United States Army and Navy. And a lot of states, like Massachusetts and others, began to recruit. The governor of New York, Horatio Seymour, said no. He wasn't going to give permission to the state of New York. So what it took was a number of abolitionists who happened to be Republicans at that time, organized and get permission from the War Department to organize these regiments, 20th, 26th, 31st. I wrote about them for my dissertation. They trained at Rikers Island before it was for prisoners. But these men, many of them run away from slaves, said they got treated worse on the boats going from Manhattan to Rikers Island than they were in the plantations. And these men, the soldiers, had to march down Broadway to get on ships to go to the South. And their commanding officer, the colonel, said, make sure you have live ammunition walking through the streets of New York. Because who knew, because just had a few months earlier, he had the riots that killed people. And who knew what the reaction would be. To see a black man in a uniform with a rifle with bullets is a danger. And that's why we know the history. We know after World War I, when soldiers came home, some got lynched. Because they were in uniforms and they had the knowledge of how to use the weapons. See, y'all have to go to the library, that's all I can say. See, the thing about libraries is they have, see, one thing about America is pretty good at keeping records. Like Germany, you put something down on a piece of paper and you put it away somewhere in the libraries or archives. It's there. And you can go to the newspapers. I did a lot of research in 19th century African American newspapers because those newspapers would be equivalent today, television and cable TV and everything else in terms of an outlet for news. And you get a lot of important information in those newspapers because what they did, they exchanged their papers. So a paper published in New York would have information from a paper from Savannah, Georgia, or Norfolk, Virginia, or Cincinnati. So you had a sense as a reader what's going on throughout the country. And that's how you knew about people getting organized, whether it's for labor or politics or something else.
How does cash bail turn poverty into a crime? Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford to pay your bail, and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty, and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail is immoral and unjust. That's why the Bail Project helps those who cannot afford it while fighting to end cash bail, because freedom should be free.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies. Because when people are fed, futures are nourished. Everyone deserves to live a full life. And with your help, together we can end hunger. Join the movement at feedingamerica.org/act now.
Is there a hand up? Is there a hand over here? Yeah. Is there a hand?
This is 2024. So what is our guideline now to keep our freedom? How do we address that in 50 years from now, 20 years from now?
Well, the whole thing is to organize yourself. See, one thing I don't like is that we had the prophets. We had all the prophets, we had all the solutions 100, 150 years ago, and then we don't know about it because we haven't read about it. So anything we talk about today, people talked about before.
Yes.
Whether it's politics, whether it's economics, they had answers before. I don't know where you live, but where I live, everybody sees an arrow that's in stores. I go to bodegas, different game men. I go to Dunkin' Donuts, they're from Bangladesh.
That's right.
And then people say, why? Well, because you didn't listen, because we were told before how to get organized economically. And we forgot it. See? And that's what happens. So the thing is, how do you organize and how do you sustain it? And the problem is that too often we go from generation to generation trying to learn what we should have learned and remembered from previous generations. Yes? Yes?
Our example today is the age of the reason that we're here today. And she's 96 years old. And she's been very successful accomplishing what she did with age. And hopefully we can follow suit. And who we have in line with what we have to do with age. Thank you.
Yeah, well, okay, Bessie, come on, Bessie Jackson. I've known Bessie since sometime in the early 80s. So I met Bessie through Seraile sometime in the 1980s. So it's a good 40 years. She's always been the same way. She wants something done, she'll do it. And that's relevant. And but also too, what she's an example of is patience. Because you can't have what you want when you want it all the time. You got to develop it. So I mean, just think, here we are the day to commemorate. 20 years ago, we were having prayer breakfast, and a handful of people would show up, and that's it, year to year to year. And now we have 4 occasions. So Brooklyn had something earlier. The Bronx has 2. There's something going on at the Bronx courthouse. Manhattan has something earlier. So next year it might be 5, might be 20.
Well, we can need to spread the word.
Yeah, but see, again, you spread the word, but
everybody
you have to see, if you're a disciple will go to a place and stay long enough to make sure other people do the same thing when they leave. And that's why I said, if you're here today in Lincoln Hospital, but then you may not be here in 5 years, because who knows, but you could be here in 5 years. If people who work here say, I want to take up what you do, it maybe no more than a half hour or an hour. But still, it's just, they can have a display when you walk into the hospital, and people say, well, what's that? And they stop for a moment, and you see something like these signs over here, and you read it. And then that's education, and who knows where they may take it to. And same with libraries. Same thing, you have something that people come in, they see it. If they see it, they pay attention.
Right.
And then before you know it, it's going to be widespread. Because one day, I may not be around, but some of you are young enough. If you're 50 or 60, you're still young enough.
Amen.
To, 20 years maybe, it might be a holiday. Or it might be, obviously, if it's not a holiday, it's still going to be well known.
Right.
It's still going to be observed by people.
Right.
Yes?
You mentioned World War II. My father served in World War II. A whole lot of people seem to forget, even though FDR got elected 4 times. July 26, 1948, Harry S. Truman, when he signed Second Order 9981, due to the fact about Sergeant Lacey, a World War II Army sergeant, black man, come home to his wife. And because he wanted to use the restroom, the Greyhound bus driver called the local sheriff, and one of the deputies showed up, and the next thing Sergeant Lacey knew, he was waking up in the jail cell, blind in both eyes.
Yeah.
And then when Walter White brought this issue to Harris to the crowd, I remember that because I kept on hearing about D-Day, June 6th. What was the fight about for black soldiers? And also a couple of months with black nurses, and the way they treat black nurses in World War II, and this discovery right here was ridiculous. Because all the coming nurses, a lot of people don't know, you come here as a second lieutenant or an ensign, and then what white military service people saluting black nurses, so they made them warrant officers. But we asked that fact. Sergeant Lacey, once again, Second Law 9981, it was July 26, 1948. Even though it said black folks overseas to fight for liberty, they didn't get liberty in the military. It was about the desegregation of the United States military in 1948, and coming up this month will be the 76th year this happened. Let's go back to the fact of the draft also. Understand that fact, and this is not in the curriculum, in the educational system. A whole lot of people don't know that New York State has a National Guard camp right up in Bear Mountain area, Camp Smith. So going back to your point of view, putting the truth in the curriculum about the United States military, because black folks have fought in every war since 1776 with George Washington troops down to stop university to keep black folks from leaving. And they only want to talk about that.
Well, yeah, that's true. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, as far as, you mentioned New York's National Guard, that became the 369th, the Hell Fighters from Harlem, the Armory in Harlem. They fought, but they couldn't wear American uniforms. They had to wear French uniforms and carry French weapons. And the French recognized them with honors, but still some of them got lynched when they came back home. Because they represented the threat, because they had the ability to fight. And they weren't scared, they weren't cowards, because they knew what they did in France. Yeah, I mean, in World War II, Army was segregated. The Army, Air Force, before we had the Air Force, is separate. Didn't want to have black men as pilots. It took the intervention of Eleanor Roosevelt to say, well, let's have an experiment. And that experiment was the Tuskegee experiment. And a number of people who became pretty prominent here in New York State, like Percy Sutton, Roscoe Brown, were involved with Tuskegee Airmen. Because the so-called wisdom was black man couldn't fly because he'd get sick, because you got to do the loops. And he'd get sick and he'd probably lose sense of direction. And yet they were so good at what they did that a lot of the pilots of the big planes asked them to be their guides, to protect them, because there are smaller planes that go faster. They can fly above or below or aside the big ones, and they can attack the Germans. And so they proved that they had those skills, but still. See, the father of Emmett Till got executed in France because he was accused of rape. The unknown story is that a lot of white soldiers were raping, but they weren't accused. So Emmett Till's father, whether he did it or not, he got executed. So that's what goes on in time of war. In Vietnam, a lot of these men of color coming out of New York and elsewhere at the time period when people began to have Afro hairstyles. Well, they got court-martialed, a lot of them, because they didn't want to cut their hair. But meanwhile, there were white guys with hair down the side of their chins and had on little Confederate flags on the uniforms. That was acceptable. See, one thing I'm concerned with today, you probably know this, you know who the Secretary of Defense is?
Yes.
Okay, Lloyd with Austin? He's a black man. Okay, you know who the person in charge of the Africa for the American military? See, another black man. See, so sometimes I get upset when I hear about men of color in prominent positions. Sometimes I'm getting to wonder what are they there for and what their purpose is.
Come a long way.
See, what's the purpose? Because I'm way past that stuff. Like I'm proud that that's the first. that's 50, how many years ago? So you got to wonder, like, what's the ulterior motive in these kinds of appointments? So that's something to think about, because we can find ourselves in situations where we are our own people are the ones who are going to tell us, die. Because they have the power and who they're going to follow.
Listen up, team. When I look around this room, I see a fighting team of brave antibodies. But the flu is coming in strong, so I won't sugarcoat it. I need each one of you on your A game. The good news is, Anthony, the human body we've been tasked to protect, just got his flu shot, which supplied us with brand new gear to defend against the flu. That's right, we've upgraded our game with this new equipment. They give you a little extra boost. So let's go fight for Anthony, for his mom, his co-workers, that nice lady Patricia that lives down the street with the cute dog. In the face of viral adversity, we make Anthony thrive so he can protect himself and the people he loves most. Are you with me? Yeah!
Let's work as a team to defend against the flu. Gear up with a flu shot to help protect others and reduce your risk of being sick or hospitalized with the flu. Learn more at getmyflushot.org.
Another hand back there?
Yes, I'm grateful for being here. My name is Patricia A. Charles, and back in the day, I was out there doing the footwork with Bessie Jackson, getting those petitions, and I was very glad that I was able to be a part of that. I also was a part of the breakfasts that they did, and now I told my daughter I didn't want her to be penalized today because I knew she couldn't come because it was a last minute thing for her. But she promised that she's going to make sure that she passes this on to her circle of young people. And that she will be able to make sure that she puts her time in for next year so she can be here and be efficient.
So how old is your daughter?
43.
Okay, is she working today? Or should be working?
Yes, she has to go because she works for another company. And I know she would have been penalized if she did go. So I didn't want her to have to go through that fallout. So she said that she would make sure she did finish.
Okay, but see, what I was saying earlier, people who work in certain areas might be in position to have something on display. It's nothing more than a table, with some books and a couple signs, and just something so people get aware that they say, I want to know more. And obviously, if you work for like a hospital or a large company, because a lot of people are doing things just because it's safe. So it's safe to do it, but you have to understand, if they think it's safe and we think it's revolutionary, we don't care what they think. I'll do that for those people because they don't think it means too much. But what it does mean for us is that it's spreading information.
Well, I don't want to clarify whatever her position is right now, but again, like I said, as long as she knows that she's going to make sure that her circle of young people in their 40s will come to participate within the year, I will bring it to their attention why. I wrote part of it, but not full of it. So now at least they're aware of, and they know what they can position themselves next.
So they live in the Bronx, or where they live? They live in the Bronx, or where?
They live in the Bronx, they live in Brooklyn, they live in Queens, so
Okay, well, the thing is that one day you can do this, become a member of the Sala.
Well, I'll be working on it, baby. We're working on it.
Yeah, that's one thing. That way you get more
That's
involved.
what we're here to do.
How are you? My name is Seraile. I would like to ask you, do you still, although you may be retired, do you still give classes to talk to people about this knowledge that's here?
Yes.
I haven't done that. I have not done that, but
would you be interested in doing that?
Yeah, because
I would be interested in attending.
Well, I'll be interested in sharing the
talk to me afterwards.
I need to learn.
Talk to me afterwards.
Because I'm a Mizan. Caldwell Mizan.
You talk to me afterwards because
Pastor.
I've been asked that before. I know some people are interested, and sometimes they never bother to call me back. But anyway, yeah, it's possibilities.
Thank you.